Welcome to our first Thursday of the month Lunch and Learn program. I am Jack Buttram. Can you all hear me? I am Jack Buttram, representing the Evansville Wartime Museum. It's an honor to have all of you here. I have lots of people to thank for today, particularly VFW number 1114 for allowing us to meet in their facility, and I understand it's free. And that's it. You all know by now that the Bruncik Trust helps fund this for us, and we always thank them. Particularly, we thank Dr. Ed Bruncik for being here. We have a real treat in front of us with him. Thank you, Ed. Thank you for all of you who have attended, and thank you for the volunteers who have put this all together. We have our meals in front of us. It's time for our morning prayer. Would you bow with me? Thank you, Father, for this day and for allowing us to be a part of it. On this day, which we call the World Day of Prayer, we pray as they do all over the world. We pause to reflect on the many, many blessings you have supplied. Today, as this group of mainly senior citizens share a meal, we're going to learn of the experiences of our friend Dr. Ed Bruncik, who spent time serving as a medical doctor in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. There were those in this country who thought this war was unnecessary and refused to participate. But our USA leadership considered the war as a threat to our democracy and even resorted to a draft system to secure the necessary military. Our prayer today, Father, is to ask your blessing on the many men and women of the U.S. military forces who gave their all in innumerable acts of courage, heroism, commitment, and empathy to their comrades and to their country during that very difficult activity. And as we listen to one of those who participate, help us, Father, to understand, appreciate, and support those who personally live through these difficult experiences. So now we ask your blessing on this meal. May it serve as a beginning of renewed service to you, for we ask in your holy name. Amen. Amen. Would you please stand with us? It's time to do our Pledge of Allegiance and our song. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Larry Hand, lead us in our national anthem.
Feel free to join me with the national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Good job, Larry.
Seated and seat. You may be seated. we will wait for the 10 or 12 minutes. We'll have John Gross. We'll have John Gross introduce our speaker in the next 10 or 15 minutes. Thank you for being here again.
Welcome to VFW 1114. There are a lot of people here today, a much bigger crowd than we had at our last lunch and share. So there was some information that was given about VFW 1114, and for all those who were here last week and who could hear me, you've got a chance to answer these 3 questions. So VFW 1114, number 1 through 15, where do they rank as far as the largest or smallest, or what number between 1 and 15 in the state of Indiana? Number 1. In the United States, where does VFW 1114 rank in size? 3 is right. Worldwide, in the global realm, where does VFW 1114 rank? 6. That's right. I heard it. Good job. So we're thankful that VFW 1114 allows us to come here at no charge. Today, before we speak about Dr. Bruncik, we have some guests from the Newburgh Museum, Jim Miller and Ivy Clark. Ivy Clark is their newly hired executive director. They're going to come up and spend just a few minutes to talk about their museum. I'm looking for Jim and Ivy. Ah, you're right here. Come on up. I saw all the faces and saw no faces.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Jim Miller. I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Newburgh Museum, and this is Ivy Clark. She is the newly appointed Executive Director. I'm going to correct things a little bit. We're not really here to talk about our museum, although we're going to mention a couple of things about it. But so I'm sorry. We're not here to talk about necessarily our museum, but I will mention a couple of things about it. The Newburgh Museum is greatly saddened by the Evansville Wartime Museum's recent loss. We are confident that their resiliency will bring them back even stronger to better serve you in the future. Please know we are ready to help in any way we can. The Newburgh Museum is grateful to the Evansville Wartime Museum for the artifacts they have loaned us to help improve our own displays, especially our current World War II displays. We also want to thank those members of various levels who have volunteered their time to present certain World War II events at the Newburgh Museum's speaker series. Ivy?
Hi, I'm Ivy Clark, the Executive Director, and today we would just really like to show our appreciation for Evansville Wartime Museum. And through our speaking series and the donations we have collected, thankfully today I am here to present a check for as much as we could help with the relief of the Evansville Wartime Museum after the tornado that happened a couple weeks ago. So today I would like to present this to John. Thank you so much. And any way that we can help, you all have been there for us for a very long time, so thank you.
You dropped it. Thank you, folks.
That check was a surprise. I talked to Jim and Ivy beforehand and had no idea they were making a financial award to us. Thank you for the $200 you've contributed to the museum. Our speaker today is Dr. Ed Bruncik. Dr. Bruncik graduated from the University of Kansas with a zoological degree. And then he went to the University of Missouri School of Medicine and graduated there. He served 5 years as an internship and an orthopedic residency. At the end of that 5 years, he was selected as one of the 5 outstanding orthopedic residencies in the United States. Dr. Bruncik then served in the United States Air Force for 9 years. He retired with rank of lieutenant colonel. Since then, he's been the team doctor for the University of Southern Indiana for 27 years. He's been an orthopedic surgeon in Evansville for 47. And at the very young age of 85, Dr. Bruncik retired. And we're so happy to have Dr. Bruncik come to speak today.
Thank you very much for coming. I see a lot of friends here today, and I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come here. Today, I'm in this uniform, by the way, because and I'm going to take this coat off after a while because I'm tired of sucking it in. So, okay. This is the uniform I wore during the time that all this took place. The thing I'm going to talk today about is, where did I point this? I'm going to talk about Vietnam and the 3-track ski club. Where? Point to here. I'm going to talk about Vietnam and the 3-track ski club today. I'll tell you a little bit about Vietnam more from a medical point of view, not so much as a military tactical point of view. And then I'll tell you about the injured soldiers that we took care of that came back from Vietnam. I'd like to tell you about the hospital that they came to, the lucky ones, I think, came to the Fitzsimmons Army Hospital. And then I'll also talk to you about 2 outstanding men that I worked with during that time. And then I want to talk to you the final thing about the 3-track ski club, which is a thing that we invented for these men. It's never been reproduced. So how about Vietnam? As you see, that Vietnam is on that peninsula that hangs off the southern edge of the continent, on the most inner side right there, little tiny country. So there's 5 countries that are part of Indochina: Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Myanmar. You know Myanmar by the name of Burma. It was Burma until 1988. The reason this was called Indochina is because the Europeans who came there initially thought that they were a unique combination of Indian people and Chinese people. The people in Indochina didn't like that too much. China seemed to have the dominant control in North Vietnam. The countries in Vietnam were subdivided, and that Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia were called French Indochina for a time because they were colonies of France. They didn't like that too much, actually. So now we have this little country that's giving us such a hard time. Look at its comparative size. If it were one of our states, it would be smaller than Alaska, smaller than Texas, smaller than California, smaller than Montana, and only slightly bigger than New Mexico. Yet it gave us a really hard time. Here are our stats as of 1975 at the end of the Vietnam War. We had 47,000 KIA. We had 47,000 KIA. We had 11,200 DOW, and look at that, 153,000 wounded from that little tiny nation. So KIA means killed in action. And DOW means died of wounds. So what's the difference of that? These people obviously died of their wounds also. The difference is in the definition. If you sustained an injury on the battlefield and you died before you got any medical care other than that given to you by a combat medic, then you're KIA. If you made it back to any other source of medical care, such as a MASH unit in Vietnam, or they changed the acronym in Vietnam and called it a MUST, M-U-S-T unit, if you died there, even if you were only there 15 minutes, then you're a DOW. So what do people die of in war? The overwhelming amount of people die in war, like 99%, die of exsanguination. Exsanguination means you die of blood loss. A few people, a percent, will die of central nervous system injury. Central nervous system is your brain and spinal cord. So if you get injured with that, you die. And then there's a few outliers who will do something like drown. But by far, the majority of people die of exsanguination. Well, why is that? If you are walking down a trail in Vietnam and you inadvertently set off devices on either side of the trail, the shrapnel spews across the trail and chews people up. If you get a fragment wound or a bullet wound in your abdomen or chest, the combat medic cannot get at that. He can't open your abdomen or chest and control the bleeding so you bleed to death. On the other hand, if you get wounds of your extremities, your arms, your legs, he can see that, he can control that, he can put tourniquets on that. And for that reason, most of the people who come back to hospitals in the States to take care of are orthopedic patients by definition. Or injuries to the extremities are orthopedic patients. So they had to come back to some place. Well, where are they going to come back to? Well, as I said, the lucky ones, I'm biased, of course, came back to Fitzsimmons. Fitzsimmons is a unique enough hospital that I just have to drop back here and tell you something about it. Fitzsimmons, see that in 1918 up there, that's the end of the last year of the end of the First World War. Suddenly the War Department noticed they were going to have a whole bunch of people, injuries coming back from Europe, and they didn't have enough beds to put these people in. So they quickly went out to Aurora, Colorado. Aurora, Colorado is a little town just on the eastern border of Denver. They bought 577 acres, that's what that is there, and they started throwing up buildings. They didn't have time for a brick and mortar hospital. These people were on the boat coming back, not on planes at that time, and they had to get something up. So this is a 577 acres. This is south, that's north, here's east, and there's west. This road that runs right along there is called Colfax Avenue, C-O-F-A-X. This is the main entry to that 577 acres. Remember that, we're going to talk about that later. And here are all the little buildings they put up to get these injured patients. What kind of injured patients are coming back? Well, for the most part, they're mustard gas patients. Mustard is a misnomer, and that is it's not mustard, but it does smell like mustard, plants, garlic, or horseradish. It's also not a gas. It's a liquid droplets, little oily, watery droplets. It's delivered to the enemy in a shell that bursts overhead, and then this mist comes out and goes wherever the breeze takes it. It's very toxic to the cells, and so if it falls on your skin, you get blisters. If you breathe it in your mouth, then you get blisters inside your mouth, inside your bronchial tubes, and if you get enough in your lungs, you die. The Germans in the First World War killed 90,000 people with mustard gas, and they injured 1,200,000. Those aren't all Americans. Those are partially English, partially French, and partially indigenous people. So those are the people who are coming back. Now I had to show you this simply because I like the slide. This is at the War Museum in Vincennes. And see this guy back here, he's got his gas mask on, he's ready. The other things that Germans use, they use phosgene and chlorine too. But this is just about mustard gas today. But I don't know what he has on there, but they had no self-propelled artillery in the First World War. So if you're going to move that stuff, you had to have a horse do it, or you had to move it yourself. So it would behoove one to keep your horse alive. So for that reason, they have the horse gas mask, they have the horse goggles, they have the horse air canister. That tube right there is supposed to be hooked in right there, but it didn't. So anyway, I thought it was a great slide. Okay, now it's 1920, 2 years after the First World War. The mustard gas patients have reached what we call MMI or MMB. MMI is maximum medical improvement, MMB maximum medical benefit. Either way, it does you no good to stay in the hospital anymore. We can't help you any further. So these people fell into three groups of mustard gas patients. Some died, Some moved out to nursing homes, and some got well enough they could hold a job down, but they were what we call 4 handkerchief a day patients. And they still coughed up bad mucus from their lungs. It was nasty. Cough it up, fill up a handkerchief, wash it out in the nearest sink, hang that handkerchief up on a windowsill or one of those old heaters that you used to have exteriorized in your room. They worked their way through 4 handkerchiefs on that. So they called 4 handkerchief a day patients. It was pretty nasty for the mustard gas patients, and it was also semi-nasty for the people who had to work around that. So, but now it's 1920. It's 1920. So Fitzsimmons has no reason to exist anymore, and there's reasons to say, let's close it. So they're hunting around for what can we do? So they said, well, it was noted, not only in the United States, but elsewhere, that people with tuberculosis seem to do better at an altitude than people in Evansville, Indiana, at virtually no altitude. So since Fitzsimmons had that going, they said, let's make it the tuberculosis center of the armed services. Then about that time in 1919, which is 1 year after the end of the First World War, 2 physicians published 2 papers, one in England, one in Germany. They didn't know each other, and their conclusions were the same. The best treatment for, now this is all pre-antibiotic, of course, the best treatment is heliotherapy. You know, heliotherapy combined with an altitude. Helio is Greek for sun. So we live in a heliocentric universe where the Earth and all the other planets orbit around the sun. So the idea was you get heliotherapy, you get sun therapy at an altitude, and that's the best. Well, Fitzsimmons had both of that going for us because, see, it's at 5,403 feet. It's even higher up than Denver, which is 5,280 feet. So it was said, okay, from now on, you are the tuberculosis center. So the idea, we had 577 acres, and the people could come there, and then they would walk around. They'd go out with just no shirt on, just shorts on, walk around, bake in the sun. There's some possible theory to that, and that is, 10% of the rays that come from the sun are ultraviolet rays, which are DNA, destroy DNA. So there's maybe a little of biology to that, chemistry. So now they're walking around the 577 acres. And because they get tired, they sit under a tree, and because tuberculosis is a respiratory irritant, they spit a lot. So they spit, the squirrels come out of the tree, sample the spit, see if it's good to eat, and the whole squirrel population gets tuberculosis. So that's one of those unintended circumstances. So when I came for my orientation lecture in 1960s, one of the things they told me is still, don't fool with the squirrels, they all have tuberculosis. So now it's 1938, it's 20 years after the First World War. And the War Department now says we need a brick and mortar building now. So they built this, and it was the largest hospital that the military had ever built. It was the largest building that had ever been built in Colorado. It was 3,000 rooms, could take care of 2,250 people at the same time. This is called Fitzsimmons Building 500 now, because they had all these little buildings around there also. It was called Fitzsimmons 500 because the architect wanted the entryway to the lobby right there to be 500 yards from Mountain View Boulevard. But that name hung on. You'd think when the building was built it would be over. So this was started in 1938. It was finished in 1941, 4 months before we declared war on Japan and Germany. Very fortuitous, a good guess, or somebody really had a good idea that we were going to be in war soon. So this building served the United States beautifully in the Second World War. It served the United States beautifully in the Korean War from 1950 to 1953. And in 1955, we had a famous patient. That's Eisenhower. He came to Colorado to fly fish, and he suffered a massive heart attack. They rushed him to Fitzsimmons, and that was before stents, before open heart surgery. So they sedated him, put him to bed rest, and just hoped that he could live. So he was given the entire 8th floor. So this is the 9th floor here. The 10th floor is abbreviated, so they get the entire 8th floor. And they brought staff from the White House out. Mamie lived in the room on one side of him, and they had a cardiologist live in the room next to him 24/7 for 7 weeks. I bet you don't get that kind of care if you go to the hospital, right? So anyway, yeah, he brought one other thing out. He brought out this eagle. That's a special eagle. That eagle says, wherever that eagle is, that's the center of government of the United States. So this was the White House for 7 weeks in 1955. Only hospital that could ever say that. So now we have the great hospital. We have Vietnam. We have people coming back from Vietnam, most of whom are orthopedic patients. So now we have orthopedic. We have the guy who's leading our orthopedic section, and my first great guy I'm going to tell you about. This is Colonel Paul Brown, great guy. We had 1,950 patients usually. That's a big number to take care of, and with no computers. And so to keep those straight so nobody fell in the cracks was really a job. See, this is Paul's computer here, that book, and there, that's not a cell phone, that's another book, and he has another book over here. That's the way we all had, and we took notes and then turned them all into secretaries, and they tried to get it all straightened out. There may have been a computer someplace in administration where I never went, but we had none on the orthopedic service, and we certainly never had a. We knew there was such a thing because we knew they were using kind of early versions to launch astronauts at the Cape, but we didn't have any. So keeping everything straight was important and hard. Now, Paul was a bit of an unusual guy. He's a little quirky on the edges, and I like that quirkiness about him. So one of the things he always said, that was his main quote, don't get too comfortable with comfortable. If you're comfortable all day, it means you're not on a cutting edge of anything, and it means you're not trying anything new. So he would preach that. If you're comfortable, he didn't like it. One of the other things he said to me one time we were in surgery together, he said, Ed, do you think you'll be doing this surgery the same way in 20 years? I said, probably not, Paul. I expect there'll be some improvements in 20 years. He said, right. So why don't you just do it that way right now? So anyway, this is Colonel Paul Brown. That's the highest rank at that time that you could get and be a clinician to where you're still taking care of patients. At that time, I don't know if it's that way yet or not, but the only way you could get to be a general then in the medical services, you had to be a hospital administrator. You had to quit. You had to go back and get a degree in public health, and then you could be administrator, and then you had a shot at a generalship. But otherwise, Paul was as high as he could go. Was he always a colonel? No, he wasn't. Here he is, Corporal Paul Brown. He graduated from college in 1940 with a 4-year degree in zoology. Oddly enough, the same degree I got. And there were only 4.6% of the population in 1940 had a 4-year degree. So that put him in really a minority. So he was drafted in 1941. So he thought, well, I'll be going to Officers Candidate School probably pretty soon. And they told him he would, but all the slots were filled right now. But somebody will be tapping you on the shoulder pretty soon. But nobody ever tapped him on the shoulder. And the highest grade he made in 4 years was corporal. But he said this, I was good at making corporal, I made it 4 times. So for those of you who haven't been in the military, that's not good. You know, he went from PFC to corporal, then he did something, got broken back to PFC, back to corporal, got broken back to PFC. I never asked him, and he never offered, why he got broken back so much, because I thought I knew. I'm sure it was insubordination. He had a total genetic inability to put up with a stupid idea. He was a good teacher and a good parent. He would never say, he would say, that's a stupid idea. And then he would say, it's well below your capability and potential. You just happen to come up with this stupid, but he'd tell you that. And so I'm sure he told that to a sergeant, boom, he's back PFC. He probably told that to an officer sometime, boom, back to PFC. And I think he probably forfeited any opportunity to ever go to Officers Candidate School, either the first or second time he got broken back. I mean, this guy was not looked at favorably then. So, but Paul had an unbelievable military history. He went through 3 amphibious landings. I'll bet you don't know people who went through 3 amphibious landings and lived through it. Now, when he got in, he was a stevedore. He unloaded ships. So you don't get shot too much as being a stevedore. So that helped him in this Operation Torch, which is a landing in North Africa. See, that's North Africa right there. He landed right near Casablanca, which is right there. He was under Patton, who was under Eisenhower. Eisenhower had not been made the Supreme Commander of Europe yet. So right after they got this secured, then he was made a gunner. Now he's trying to shoot people. And so this is a little bit hard to see, I know, but right here is Sicily. Where is it? Tyrrhenia Sea, Sicily, right there. It's hard for you guys to read, I know. It's better on my computer. But everybody thought the next landing would be in Sicily. And matter of fact, Eisenhower said, everybody in the world knows we're going to land in Sicily next, including Hitler. So they needed a diversionary tactic. Some of the English wanted to land at Sardinia there, and a few, I think including Churchill, wanted to land right over here on the Peloponnesian Peninsulas where Greece is. They then wanted to come up along the east side of the Adriatic Sea through the Balkans and Yugoslavia, come across northern Italy and trap the troops, the Axis troops in there. But Eisenhower said, no, we're landing on Sicily, so they needed a diversionary tactic. So the diversionary tactic, I love it. Here it is right on this red arrow. Notice where it's pointing to Spain there. Just to the west of, just to the east of the Spain-Portugal border, just to the west of the Straits of Gibraltar. So what they cooked up was Operation Mincemeat. How many have heard of Operation Mincemeat? Have you heard? It's a great. Ian Fleming, who wrote 007, he was the main guy who cooked this all up. I'm sure he loved it. So the first thing that they needed a cadaver. And they found one in an unused warehouse in London, a street person who died. He died of rat poisoning. There were no cans or bottles of rat poisoning around, so they thought that he probably died by eating something that had eaten rat poison, namely a rat. That was probably what he caught and ate the night before, but it killed him. This was this guy's name. No vowels in the first name, so I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's Michael is the last name. So now they got him, and they're going to make him an aviator. And they have to give him a little bit of a rank, because what they're going to have to do, they make him a major. So they said he has to have a little rank to be trusted like this. So now they got Major Morton. And they tried to put his picture on this identity card 4 times, but they said no matter what they do, he still looked like a cadaver. So they got this guy, Captain Ronnie Reed. He was a real aviator, and there were a lot of aviators who had the name Reed as the last name in England. So therefore they thought the Germans would have a harder time tracing that down. So they got this guy. So now they have an aviator suit on him. So now you have to put what they call pocket rubble in his pocket, things that an aviator might have. One of the things he might have is a picture of his girlfriend. So that's a picture of his girlfriend right there. Now actually, over here, that's MI6, Military Intelligence Section 6. She was in MI5, Military Intelligence 5. She was a spy. And so she was a head of lies and misinformation, kind of like our CNN and MSNBC now. So anyway, now they have a picture of her in his pocket, and they had 2 love letters she wrote him. And they had some coins, they had 2 unused theater tickets, but the piece de resistance that I thought was great, they had a note from his bank saying it was overdrawn. I thought that was brilliant. So now they said, how did he die? Well, first of all, they came with the idea he was an aviator, so he jumped off an airplane and his parachute didn't open. But that created a lot of problems, like what bones did he break? How does the parachute lift? So finally they decided he drowned. So they put water in his lungs, just in case somebody would check that. So now they have to get him to this spot. So they get him here in a submarine at night. And they surface there, then they get him out, put him behind a boat, and tow him to that spot on Spain, where they already knew that the fishermen used that every morning. They towed him through the water to give him a little Warren look. And so, I forgot the most important thing. On his wrist, they had a handcuff. On the other end of the handcuff, they had an attaché case. And in that attaché case, they had a coded message. A code so easily broken that they knew it could be broken. And in this message, it said, we're going to go right past Sicily, fake the Germans out, go right past Sicily and land in Greece. So now he's on the beach, and the fishermen find him. He looks pretty important to the fishermen, so they kick him up a level, And finally, Franco, who was the president of Spain then, got the briefcase, and he said, this is important, we need to get this to Hitler. Hitler was still his kind of semi-buddy because Hitler helped him win the Civil War in Spain. So now Hitler has this, and they decode it. Hitler buys it hook, line, and sinker. So he sends Rommel, one of his best generals, to Greece. He sends a couple division down from the east, and he's flying people out of Sicily. So it worked. And matter of fact, the last planes carrying Germans out of Sicily were flying out 4 hours after the Americans and English landed on the southern tip of Sicily, because the communications just weren't what they should be at that time. So anyway, that worked beautifully, and it may have saved Paul's life. So now he's on second Operation Husky. 2,800 killed, 9,000 wounded. He landed about right there near Modica and Ragusa. The English landed over here near Syracuse. It took them 1 month, 1 week, and 1 day to flush the Germans and Italians out of there. The ones that escaped went through Messina and across the Messina Straits. It's only 1.9 miles wide there. So Paul made it through that alive, even as a gunner. So now his third and last one, he's in Operation Shingle. This is, look, 7,000 killed, 36,000. That's a little more. The reason they wanted to land there is you see this red line going across there. That's a very, very stable line going across Italy. The Germans were on one side, and Americans are right here, French right there, and English right there under Montgomery. The Germans had a very capable field marshal called Kesselring, and he was doing a good job. They just could not dislodge him out of those mountains. See, there's Monte Cassino there. So the idea was to land at Anzio, go across here, and trap the Germans between them. So they landed at Anzio. Mark Clark was the general who figured that all out. But there was a guy by the name of General Lucas who was actually boots on the ground. Lucas thought he was 50% undermanned to do what he was asked to do. So he was a little edgy. So Anzio is a nasty place. It's not like a beach. It's got marsh, mosquitoes. The Italians didn't even live there. So the mosquitoes were a little better then because it was the 22nd of January, 1944 when they landed. They were supposed to be up and out of there in 12 hours, up in these stippled areas, which are mountains, because if the Germans found out about them, brought troops down here with artillery, then they would be firing downhill at the Americans, which is exactly what happened. Because Lucas decided that his butt was on the line. He had to stabilize that line right next to the Tyrrhenian Sea, so he couldn't push back into the sea. So he took 48 hours to stabilize that. So then instead of getting out in 12 hours, he got out the second week in May. 4 months instead of 12 hours. Lucas was relieved of his command, but was later rehabilitated. But now the Germans are in these hills up here firing down at them. That's the reason it's so bad on that. So now, a lot of people getting killed, a lot of people wounded. So Paul's commander came one day and said, we need a volunteer to be a combat medic. So why is that? Because they all got killed. And so who wants to volunteer for that job, right? So Paul said he held up his hand. I said, why would you do that? You know, everybody's getting killed. And he said, I wanted to do something worthwhile. He said, unloading a ship wasn't worthwhile. I didn't think shooting people was worthwhile, so maybe this would be worthwhile. Now, the reason they were getting killed so much is one thing, they had a target on the side of their head. And they died at a much higher rate, and the Germans did too. Their medics did too. Their First World War, their helmet looked exactly like that. They changed it to the same colors as their other troops, and they put this little logo on the side, German War Eagle, swastika, and a little cross. And then their rate of being killed is down. So Paul said one of the things he did do was he didn't wear that helmet. He kept the same helmet. And then we'd crawl out on the field. I got to tell you, just because you say you're a combat medic doesn't mean you're a combat medic. They're like our EMTs. They have 120 hours of school training, and they have 40 hours of clinical training. So, and then with clinical training, people's watching you do this to see if you're doing it right. Well, he had none of that. And all of a sudden, he's crawling out on the field with an injured person trying to do something. And he said he'd crawl up next to the injured person, and first thing he'd say is, I wonder what somebody would do who knows what they're doing. And it must have been very stressful for him. So then so he was this, and then after the war was over, he went to medical school on a GI Bill, became an orthopedist, and then ended up the colonel running the orthopedic service at Fitzsimmons. So now here's a typical patient or for amputations, and I'm limiting my talk today to leg amputations. We have between 500 and 900 people like that in the hospital every day. That's a lot. So this is a below knee amputation. See, that's a knee, here's below knee. It's 5.5 to 6 inches stump, very good, tapered on the end. That'll fit a prosthesis beautifully, and that guy will walk with no limp 100% of the time. So now if you want to get your nomenclature right, so this is below knee, so that's one side. So one is uni, right? Like unicorn or unicycle has one wheel. So that's a unilateral below knee. Now if you had both legs off, which many people did, it'd be like bicycle, two, so it's bilateral below knee. And then if it was up here, he would be above knee. Now, this lady will not walk without a limp. She's lost a very important joint. She's lost the biggest joint in her body, her knee. Now, she wasn't from Vietnam. I just wanted to show you that lady, she'll have a limb. Now, our biggest problem was not the amputations. We could take care of that. We got really good at that. We could do all kinds of things with the amputation. Our biggest problem was this, depression. That's typically how we saw our patients. We saw the tops of their head. And he's looking into an abyss there, a deep hole. And in that deep hole, he sees all the things he can't do. He sees his lost leg. He sees he can't get a date. He says he can't get married. He can't have children, won't have grandchildren, can't have a regular job. That's what all he sees there. He sees hopelessness. And we had a hard time with that. And one of the things that this famous man said is if you gaze long enough into an abyss, like that's an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. It'll permanently grab you. So we had to do something about that depression. We were very inexperienced with getting rid of people on depression. So one of the first things we did, we asked people to come in and give interesting lectures. They didn't care about that. The soldiers didn't care about that any. I mean, they would go if we made them go, but if you asked them an hour later what that lecture about, they couldn't tell you. So then we said, okay, how about comedy? So then any comedians coming through Denver, we'd contact them and say, would you come over and give your act? Free. That'd be free because we didn't have anything on the budget. And they all did. And we'd hear people laughing for 15 minutes and then no more laughter, right back to the same depression. The amount of depression that we had varied according to personalities, but it also mostly varied according to the level of the amputation. A person who had a unilateral below knee was less depressed than somebody who lost both legs above the knee, especially if it was close to the pelvis. They were very depressed. And I would have been too. We considered it normal, but we had to break through that. So what were they most depressed about? When you ask them, they were most depressed about girls. These guys are all 18 to 23 years old. They didn't think they could get a date anymore because who would want to date a defective guy? Or if they got a date, as soon as the girl found out they actually had a leg missing, they wouldn't date them again, much less marry them. So the next thing, they said, okay, you're worried about girls. We'll get girls to come in and talk. Now, this is not like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This is to come in and talk. So we went right to the top of the chain on this, and maybe that was a mistake too, but we got Playboy magazine in those days was big. You didn't miss Playboy magazine. And the centerfold was an absolute knockout young lady, scantily clad, but at least in those days they were scantily clad and not nude. So we got two of those ladies to come in, not at the same time, but in sequence. And so they came in, and so we took them to a 30-bed ward. Yeah, we had 30-bed wards, and they were the very best. If you put this guy right here in a single-bed room, the door will always stay closed, the light will always turn off, he'll be in bed, and if you come in to visit him, he'll let you know that he'd rather if you had not, again, until he got hold of you. And so but if you put him on a 30-bed ward, the lights have to be on, people are talking, people are doing stuff, and at least he gets a little sensory input that way. So the girls come in and to a 30-bed ward. Well, now, by the time they got there on a 30-bed ward, there were 90 people in that room. Guys coming from the other wards that they could, why not? Yeah, matter of fact, I had to be in there to change some traction at that time. I remember thinking. So now this young girl, she's like 20 or 21. She rounds the corner to come in there, and my God, she's looking at all people with missing extremities. Some people have one arm and leg off. She's 20 or 21. I mean, that was a tough deal. So they would come with their press agent and our photographer. They would go to the orthopedic bed, was most impressive. An orthopedic beds have big things come off all four corners, and then across from those we have rods running, and down from there we'll have like a trapeze or maybe an exercise equipment or maybe something to suspend something if it's swollen. So they'd go to that bed, wrap their arm around the guy, have a picture taken, and say, I certainly hope you get better soon. Bang, they're out of there. So that confirmed the depression for these guys, that they said, see, she was already here, and she couldn't wait to get away from us. And that's correct. But if I was 20 or 21, I'd probably done the same thing. I wasn't mad at the young ladies at all. So now, on a Friday, and that's important, the fact it's on a Friday, Paul Brown said to me, I heard about an amputee ski club. This is civilian. It was formed in Vienna, Austria, and it did miraculous things for their depression. I want you to see if we can form an amputee ski club. And I said, yes, sir, because that's what you say. So now, I knew Holly and I, my wife, we were going to go skiing in Arapahoe Basin in 2 days on a Sunday. This was not the closest ski area to us. We had to pass by 4 other ski areas: Winter Park, Berthoud Pass, Loveland Valley, Loveland Basin. I don't know why we went to the 5th one that day, but I feel sure that if I hadn't gone to the 5th one that day, I wouldn't be here today talking to you about this. So now we went over Loveland Pass, and we didn't go through the Eisenhower Tunnel because there was no such thing then. And now we're down this 2-lane road right here. And when you get that 2-lane road, go around that corner, there's a magnificent panoramic view of Arapahoe Basin. So if you go around here, around that road, and turn left right below that, you're in our parking lot. So we got in the parking lot and put our boots on and then went to get ski lift tickets. So when we got to the front of the line, the young lady said, "How many?" And I said, 2 all-day adults. And I would like to talk to somebody about starting an amputee ski club. She looked at me like I was insane, and she said, "I just sell tickets. If you want to talk about anything else, you have to talk to our office manager." So I said, "Okay, where's your office manager?" She said, "Around the building on the right, first door, knock." And Holly and I went around the building on the right, knocked, and some voice says, "Come in." So we opened the door and came in. When you came in, you were in. I mean, this wasn't an office like there was an ante room or a waiting room. It was a little 12 by 14 office. The end of the desk was facing the door, so we were seeing a profile view of both guys. The one guy was clearly the manager in a chair, and he was talking to another guy on the other side of the desk who was standing. 30 seconds, that conversation was over. I was looking at this. The side view of Billy Shepard. He didn't have his hat on at stocking cap. He didn't have his goggles on, but that's what I saw. He didn't get out of his chair, and he didn't offer to shake my hand. He just said, "What can I do for you?" And he still had his Germanic brogue, so it sounded a little rough. But I just pressed right on and said, "I'm Captain Bruncik. I'm surgeon at Fitzsimmons Hospital. As you probably know, we have a lot of people coming back from Vietnam with amputations. They're all depressed. And we thought maybe if we started an amputee ski club, we could relieve their depression. Do you think we can start an amputee ski club?" With that, he leaped out of his chair. I don't mean he stood up quickly. I mean he leaped out of his chair. He was in my face by this time and shaking my hand and said, "I'm Billy Shepard." And I thought, I think I should know that name. And he said, "Of course we can start an amputee ski club. When can we get started?" Well, that's pretty strong. You know, he didn't say, "I'll run it past my boss," or something like that. He said, "When can we get started?" So I just pressed on. I said, I'm going to be on the 3rd floor, orthopedic ward at 6:30 in the morning, Monday morning. He said, "I'll meet you there." He didn't say, "Would you repeat that?" or "How do I get in?" He said, "I'll meet you there." Sure enough, he was there. When I got there at 6:30 the next Monday morning, he was in the middle of this 30-bed ward selling hard. He said, "I served in the military just like you." He did not say German Army, but he said, "I served just like you, and I was injured just like you, and I have an excellent life now, and you can do the same thing." He was going for it. So the thing I wondered was this. Oh, there's Holly. And we skied the rest of that day, had a great time. So here's Billy Shepard. I got to tell you about him. He's my second great man. He was on the German Olympic ski team in 1936. He was born in Bavaria, south of Munich, where skiing is king. Challenged only by soccer, but skiing is king. He was a men's champion at 16, and then he qualified for the Olympic ski team. After that, he was drafted, served, fought against Russia, was injured, escaped, and walked back to Vienna, Austria, and worked in the Vienna, Austria resistance. Great man. He then, in 1948, 3 years after the Second World War, he married an American woman, and they decided they wanted to live in America. So he came back, and he needed a job. So he heard about a place that was being developed called Arapahoe Basin by a guy by the name of Larry Jump, J-U-M-P. He wrote Mr. Jump a letter and said, "I need a job." Included his CV, was extremely impressive. And he got, as a ski instructor, he got a job as a ski instructor. He soon was this head ski instructor, and then soon his way of teaching skiing swept across the United States and took over. And Sports Illustrated realized that, and they gave him Sports Illustrated 2-issue feature, where they featured him. I know this is out of focus, but that's Sports Illustrated, that's Willie, Revolution in Skiing, Billy Shepard. So now everybody who knows anything about skiing, teaching skiing, they know Billy Shepard. So now, what are the other things he did? Now he did that before I met him. The other thing he did, he became Denver University ski coach for 18 years. He won the NCAA championship 13 years. He never finished worse than third. So now everybody knows him who has anything to do with college skiing. He did that before I met him. Then he designed all the runs. About in 1955, they asked him if he'd begin designing runs for the 1960 Olympics. Now he's internationally known, and it was going to be called Squaw Valley, California. Now, his runs are still there, obviously, but you can't ski his runs at Squaw Valley, California. The reason is because the stupid woke people demanded that they change the name, because squaw is defamatory to female Indians. Even though it's in two Indian vocabularies and it means what you think it means female Indian. So I don't know what's defamatory about that, but they changed the name. So now if you want to ski his runs, you have to go to Palisades, Tahoe. So all that was done before I met him. Now my question is what is a guy with that CV doing in a little office, 12 or 14 office, at 9:30 Sunday morning at Arapahoe Basin? And I thought about that a lot, and my final conclusion was he was waiting for me. He was waiting for me to come in and ask him that question, because once I said that question, it was like magic. I don't know if you believe God putting hands on the shoulder or not, but that was the most time for me right there. So now, then he became the head ski coach for the U.S. Olympic ski team. That was after I met him, Sapporo, Japan, and he was voted America's most successful ski coach. So now how do you go about building a ski club for people who have lost a leg? Well, one of the things you do is you get great people like that to help you. Then the other thing you need is you need skiers. So we sold hard on the skiing, being a ski club. It wasn't easy because these people are all depressed and they don't want to get out of bed. Now you're trying to talk to them skiing. We limited it to unilateral, so only people with one leg missing would qualify initially. We got 40 people to sign up. Many more could have signed up, but they didn't because they were depressed or they were afraid. They're going to wait to see how things turned out. But we got 40. Now you have 40 out of shape people. They were supposed to be in shape, but they weren't. So now the first meetings we had were about getting in shape. We got a dedicated physical therapist to work with these guys, because the red line, the criteria was if you couldn't get on the bus, and we were going to go on a school bus painted brown, made an army bus, the first two steps are 8 inches each. It's a big jump, one leg, 8 inches, 8 inches. So you had to do that. So the physical therapist worked well. At first it was a 2-inch jump, then 4 inches, 6 inches, eventually 8 inches. We didn't know how many would not qualify. So the second meetings we had blackboard meetings where people would draw chalk figures on the line saying, okay, here's what a ski lift looks like. Here's what a rope tow looks like. And just get them and here's what you're going to look like when you come down the hill with one leg. Then the next meetings we had were the most joyous. That was you got to pick out your equipment. Now we had no equipment. We had none, and we had nothing in the budget. And I knew the hospital commander was not going to buy goggles for skiers, but we had Willie Shepler. Willie Shepler, everybody in the ski industry knew Willie Shepler. So he simply got on the phone, called the CEO of the head company. The head company in those days was the company for skiing, much like Nike. It'd be like picking up the phone, calling Nike CEO. He picked it up, and the guy said, it sounded like a wonderful cause. I'll send everything, and I'll send extra in case you have additional people join later, which we did. All that free. Fantastic. Well, now, the meetings I was going to talk about, now guys had to pick out their equipment and their clothes. That was the fun part. And then the final thing we had meetings about was a name. You can't just say you're a ski club, you have to have a name. So they voted 7 different times on different names, and it was all voted down. So then they said, I came to the hospital one day, and they said, Captain Bruncik, guess what? And I said, what? And they said, we got a name for our club. And I said, what is it? And they said, it's a 3-track ski club. I thought it was fabulous, because you see they make 3 tracks. Here's this guy, now he has a high above knee amputation there. See, he's coming down here, he has a ski, that's a track. He has 2 poles, and each of the poles have a little ski underneath, so when they go down, they make 2 tracks. If you went down, you'd just make 2. You'd have 2 skis under your legs, and these would just be poles. So I thought the 3-track ski club was an ingenious name, and it stuck, and everybody liked it. The one thing that came out of the first time we went skiing, and I'll show you this now because it's appropriate to slide, the ski instructor said these guys have nothing to push on. They can't push on these poles because they slip. So if they wanted to pole any place, they couldn't do it. If they got below the lift line by, say, 3 feet, they couldn't get back up. They had to fall on the ground and kind of squirm up or have somebody pull them up. So I took that information to our brace shop, And they designed a thing that there was a trigger up here under the fingers and a spring, and these are hollow, so they had a rod come down, drilled a hole here, and then when they tripped it up with a hand, a 3-inch rod would come out below, and then they could pull. And then when you got finished back up there, and you had to hand set that again. So we put that in for a patent, and we were given the patent, and then gave that to Head Company. Somebody as a thank you. The Head Company guy came out and got it, and acted very, very appreciative. I think he was just appreciative because of the idea of it. I think they probably didn't make a dime out of that, but nevertheless they liked it. Okay, now it's 6 weeks from the time that I first look at Billy Shepard's side view and we're ready to go to the mountains. I thought that was absolutely breakneck speed. So the bus pulls up in front of the hospital. There's a kind of a U-shaped tarmac in front of the hospital, and everybody knew about this. I mean, we were going to go, so anybody could get away from their job in the hospital, came out and watched these guys get in the bus. And I looked up at the hospital, and there's a head about in every window looking out there to see how this is going to go. So the 40 guys came out now, and they're kind of like semi-heroes now. I mean, I was the officer in charge that day, so I stood alongside the door leading into the bus, and now one by a time, these guys had to hop up there. I knew all those guys well by this time, and so when they got up to the top, they would all look back at me, which I didn't know what they were thinking, but I know I was thinking, yay. I was glad. So anyway, everybody got on the bus except one guy. The one guy couldn't get on the bus is Jonathan. Jonathan was a bilateral above knee amputee. He lost his legs right up next to his pelvis. He was 23 years old and a lieutenant. He was the most depressed guy we had in the hospital. He would never, ever offer a statement to anybody. He would never ask for anything. He just wanted to die, and I think if he could have gotten a gun, I think he would have killed himself. So Jonathan, the day before we were going to go, he stopped me. He talked to me as I was walking down the hall. He said, "Captain Bruncik," which I stopped immediately because that's the first time I ever heard him offer a statement. He said, "May I go to the mountains with you tomorrow?" I said, "Jonathan, we don't have any way anybody's lost both legs can go." Yeah, and he said, "Oh, I know I can't ski." He said, "I want to go up and sit in the lodge and look out the window and watch you guys ski." I said, "Jonathan, you got it." That's the first time I ever heard him ask for anything. And so but I said, "You can't go like that. I mean, you got to go get you some ski clothes and something warm." And so off we went to the office and picked him out some ski clothes, and it was heartwarming. Now all of a sudden this guy wanted ski clothes that matched. I mean, before he didn't give a damn about anything. It was really nice. And so we had to help Jonathan on the bus. So now, so everybody got on the bus, and there was one seat open by the time I got on. It was next to Captain Cooper. And Captain Cooper was an old guy for an amputation. He was 29. So there was a seat open next to him. Nobody wanted to sit next to Captain Cooper for two reasons. Number one, he was old, 29. These guys were all 18 or 20. And secondly, he was an officer. Nobody wants to sit next to an officer. You know, it's like if you went to a basketball game in high school on the bus, you didn't want to sit next to an old teacher. Same idea. So I sat next to Captain Cooper. And so we drove down that center road. You remember that center road into the 577 acres? We drove south on that, turned right on Colfax, drove out of Aurora, through Denver, past the State House, past Littleton. Now we're in the foothills. The bus is louder than it should be. And the reason it's louder is because all these guys are frightened. And so they're talking a little bit louder to prove that they're not scared. So I sat next to Captain Cooper, started telling me about his surgery. He went all the way through his first surgery. And I looked over at him at the end of that to see if he was kidding me. I couldn't tell that he was, because I knew about his surgeries. He had 3 surgeries, and I did them all. And he didn't know it. But that's how impersonal it was when you have 1,900 people and they're turning over. That made me sad, the fact that he didn't know that I did his surgery. So then it came up, should I tell him I did his surgery? I know all about him. I did it. Or should I he seemed to enjoy telling me about it, or should I just be a good listener? So I was just a good listener. So he went all the way through his second surgery, all the way through his third surgery. And I was glad I listened because I learned some things. Not about the surgery itself. He wasn't talking about that. He was talking about what went on around the surgery, his communications and that kind of thing. And I learned some stuff that I changed, so I was glad I listened. So now the bus is, so now we're up in the mountains. We went over Loveland Pass again, just like Holly and I had done here, and we're down here. When the bus got right there, they got that full panoramic view of the mountains, and the bus went absolutely quiet. Not a word. They were all scared to death. because they had never skied before. So they said they thought that's the top of the mountain right there. That black thing in next snow, that's the next mountain. So they thought they were going to go to the top of that and try to come off on one ski. I mean, that's all they knew. So they were frightened. So now we wind around here, come down here, and again we pull into the parking lot. See the parking lot right there. Pull in right there, take another 90-degree turn, and we're in front of the ski lodge. We get in front of the ski lodge. There are all the ski instructors standing, waiting for us, and the ski instructors are applauding. And it was amazing. These are Vietnam veterans. They don't get applauded. They get cursed at, they get spit at, if they go cross country, people tell them to wear their civilian clothes so they don't get cursed at, rather than their military clothes. And now they're getting applauded. It was the kind of thing that when they applauded us, we all kind of looked around. We thought maybe we missed something, that somebody else was there, but then we realized they're applauding us. Fantastic. And then we look a closer look at the ski instructors, and they're all standing on one leg, like they had a leg missing. That was strong. So we got off the bus, and Willie wasn't there that day. He was in New York for a meeting, but he comped all our tickets, and then he left word that we were going to eat in the cafeteria. But everybody had to pay $1. I thought, what's that about? You know, he gave us a lot more than $1. And I could have picked it up as officer in charge. But I thought, Willie has a plan here, and I'm going to stay with his plan. And so I did. And I was glad I did. So now, Jonathan had a great day. We got him off, and it was 36 degrees and sunshiny. So he was able to sit outside the lodge with a blanket under him and a blanket over him. So he had a good morning. So now we're coming in to eat lunch. And it's just a typical cafeteria. You get your tray and you pass it down on that tray, and you pick out your food, and you get down to the end. There's no drink dispensers then. They have like drink one or drink two. You pick it up, put it on your tray. Then all our guys had to get out their billfold and pay $1. And it was good. It was normal. It was normalizing. They were just like the rest of us, and nobody complained about that $1. So now the ski instructors come through the cafeteria, all jumping on one foot. I later asked him, why, I understand everything, why did you jump through on 1 foot the cafeteria? And he said, because we were trying to see how tired they were getting. They said, we figured maybe we were in a little better shape than them, maybe, but they've been jumping on one leg, so they said that they used that to gauge how tired they was, which it was just terribly humanizing. So then they got down, the ski instructors got down to the end of the cafeteria line, and they got their drink. Now they have to get to their table. They had never jumped to a table with a tray of food and drink on 1 foot. So all the amputees they were good at that. So 2 of the guys spilled their drinks. 1 guy spilled his drink and all his food on the floor, and we all laughed at him and with him, and there was no depression in that cafeteria at that moment. So now there was one female instructor. Her name was Meg, and she came over to me. I was about halfway through my meal, and she said, "May I take Jonathan up on the mountain this afternoon?" And I said, "Meg, we don't have any way for Jonathan to ski. We're not there yet." She said, "Oh, I know he can't ski. I just want to take him up on a tray." She said, "I have a tray that I take people up on, and it's a plastic tray like kids go down sleigh ride hills on. It has a hole drilled in it. Tie a rope in that, and then another rope goes around my waist, and we just slowly come off the mountain." It sounded like she had done it quite a lot before. So then I looked over at Jonathan, and all I could see is teeth. He was smiling so big. And then I looked at his eyes, and his eyes were saying, "Oh, please, oh, please." And I could not say no to that, and none of the rest of you would have said no either. This guy was coming to life. So off we went to the ski lift after lunch. And so I told Meg before we went, I said, "Meg, it's your job to get him off the mountain, but his safety is my responsibility, so I've got to go too." My idea was I'm smart enough that I can figure out what's bad's going to happen before it happens and make it so it doesn't happen. I didn't do too good a job at that, as you'll see in a minute. But anyway, so they got on the first. We had to stop the ski lift. Jonathan got on with his tray and rope, and Meg got on with her skis, and in the next car I got on. So now we're going up, and I've never felt so old. I was only 32 or 33 then, but I was a chaperone. They're up there talking and laughing, and I'm the chaperone back there. Don't you guys kiss now. And I felt old. The first thing that went not according to my plans is there was an opportunity to get off the lift before you got to the peak. She didn't take that. They went right to the peak. I should have anticipated that. I didn't. So now they're right up on the top of this mountain right there. That's the ridge. It's always colder up there than it is in the valley, and there's always a wind, anytime I've been there, blowing from west to east. I don't know, it's hard to see now because this is not good, but there's little dark areas along in there. Those are shadows on the downside of moguls. A mogul is like a big bump in the snow, like somebody buried a Volkswagen, and then you have to go over around that. And each mogul is separate, and how it's been hit by the wind and how it's been treated by skiers. So we had to go over those. So now Meg is here on your left. Jonathan is here on the right, and there's a rope going between, and I'm standing behind the rope. So off we go. And for the first 50 yards, maybe, it was pretty good. Every once in a while, there would be a little slack coming in the rope, and there's going to be a little crack to whip, so Meg would anticipate that and lean back into the mountain to absorb that. I saw early on that she had never brought anybody off who weighed this much. Jonathan had legs missing, but he had a big chest, big torso, and a wide pelvis. I think she'd only taken children off before. Something else I should have probably asked. But then we got down about 75 yards down, something like that, right in there. And all of a sudden, there was going to be a big crack to whip. There was quite a lot of slack in there. Meg saw it, so she dug both her edges into the snow, laid back against the hill to absorb that. And so Jonathan now is weighing quite a bit. He goes forward, and when he hits into the rope goes pow. And the end of it snaps up in the air about 10 feet. So now Jonathan is going down the hill, picking up speed rapidly. And so she starts yelling, fall off, and I thought he's military, so I started yelling, eject. And I think he heard us, but I don't think he gave a rat's. So he didn't fall off. And on a better viewing here, you can see right across about in there is a ridge. He disappeared over that ridge. We skied down that ridge, and then we could see we thought he went into that bunch of pines right there. So if you ski full bore into a pine forest, you're probably dead. If you get lucky, you'll have a fractured femur or concussion. So we got down, so I thought the VC didn't kill Jonathan, but I did. That's honestly what I was thinking right then. So we got right to the edge of that red arrow, and we could hear him laughing back in the pines. Not a hurt laugh at all. So then we got down to the edge of the pines, and we could see him back in there, and he was upside down, head down, butt up against the side of a tree, and his basin, thank God, was right alongside him. But now you have to get him out of there. It's not easy. So I tried to go back in with my skis on to start off with, but with the trees how they are, they put your skis together, and you can't get back any further, and you can't lift. So we had to go back out, take our skis off, and then wade in. Well, when you wade in, that's powdery snow sometimes, and very quickly you're up to your waist, and then you have no lift power. It took us 35 or 40 minutes to get him out of there, but we did. And now we're right about there, and we got our skis back on, and then we came down this way, which is not so steep. And then we got right there, right at the edge of the bunny slopes, and Meg and Jonathan, at almost in unison, as they said, let's do that again. I thought, there is no way I'm doing that again. But I had a good excuse because all the skiers were in off the bunny slopes. And so I said, though everybody is tired and they're in the ski lodge, we got to get everybody back in the bus and go back. And that's what we did. So now this bus is retracing itself like this. And the bus is absolutely riotous. I mean, it is. Everybody is just riotous. And the noise level had gone up 20-fold, and much more than you would think it would just for skiing. And they all talked about what a wonderful sport skiing is and how somebody made this great turn, somebody else lost all their clothes. The skiers say having a yard sale, you know, where your glasses go one way and your gloves go the other. They were talking about that. It was all the way back to Deaconess, all the way on this road to Deacons, all to Fitzsimmons, all the way back to Fitzsimmons, and it never let up. It was that way into Fitzsimmons, it was that way up to the wards in Fitzsimmons, and when I left 2 hours later to go home, it was still that way. So the question is, and nobody taking off their ski clothes, the question is, what's going on? Well, my contention is that we had shined a light in that abyss so they could see hope. Before they only saw hopelessness and what they couldn't do, all of a sudden they skied and they saw hope. I believe I can do this after all. And it helped not only them, it helped the other patients, it helped the hospital, because before when you went to the hospital like a big cloud hanging over there, you almost hated to go in because you knew it was going to be doom and gloom. Now it wasn't that way. So in 1968, my residency was finished, and I went to Europe for 3 years, Bitburg Air Force Base. But in 1970, some organization from New York invited Billy and Paul to some hotel in New York, and they got an award, which was entitled Innovative Care for the Handicapped, which I thought was very, very nice. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much. I thought there would be a question. I thought the question would be, did Meg and Jonathan ever get back together again? But you didn't ask, so I'm not telling.
Yeah, Ed, do you think that kind of programming is still going on in our military for rehab?
It is not. It is not. I tried to look that up extensively, but I think that I think a couple things. I think first of all, you have to have a lot of amputees. Secondly, you have to be in the right area, like Fitzsimmons. Fitzsimmons was decommissioned in 1999. Decommissioned means that you're dead. And so in 1996, they quit admitting patients to Fitzsimmons because they didn't have enough. 1999, they decommissioned it. And then they took that 577 acres. They gave 8 acres to Aurora, which is a little town that they lived in. And the rest of it they gave to the state of Colorado. And the state of Colorado said, okay, that's great. They tore down all the little buildings except the main building, which is interesting. They still call it Building 500. I bet nobody knows why it's called Building 500, but they call it Building 500. And then they planned on that main entry road that I showed you coming in at 577 acres. On the west side of that, the state had the grand idea of building a medical school, a nursing school, and a teaching hospital. On the east side of it, they were going to build a new children's hospital called Children's Hospital of Colorado. They had a good children's hospital in downtown Denver called Denver Children's Hospital, but it was antiquated and it was landlocked. So the question is, did the state ever get around that? They did. And so if you're over there, you got to drive out Colfax Avenue and turn down that main entry and see it all. It's wonderful.
I wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. And you're standing. That's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. By the way, Meg did come and visit Jonathan. I don't know what happened eventually, but she did come and visit him. She was a nice, really nice lady. Yes.
Yeah, have you heard of the program Reboot started in Fort Campbell?
Say that again.
Reboot? It's a suicide prevention program.
I have not heard that.
It should be, I've heard the VA starting to look into it.
Yeah.
But it should be nationwide.
Yeah.
But as I heard a report 10 years ago, it's been going for 10 years.
Yeah.
1,000 people, 0 suicides.
That is fantastic. That is help that the military really needs. Even wives need some of that. I mean, it is really tough on wives when your guy is being sent overseas all the time.
Yeah, there's a program called Point Man.
Yeah.
And they have Homefront, which is for the wives.
Yeah. Yeah.
They can talk together.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that with us. Appreciate it. Okay, thanks, folks. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Bruncik, for being here. Next lunch and shares in 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, David Coker is going to talk about training for World War II pilots. So please come back, bring a friend.